Hey, hello everybody. So we are tonight live for the seventh episode of the Das Matia podcast. Tonight with me is Tigrilla Gardenia. Hey, Tigrilla.
Hello.
I'm really happy to have you here. We had like this fan moment when I was telling you how impressed I am with everything that you are doing. So I'm just gonna briefly introduce you, and then I'm gonna let you tell us, well, not everything, because we can't really cover everything that you are doing, but just explain a little bit the kind of work that you are carrying. So you are a keynote speaker and an interspecies researcher, biomimicry facilitator, and plant neurobiologist, right?
That's it.
You have different expertise domains, like from high tech to social dynamics, communications, arts. And the thing that is most impressive is that you are a part of this community called Damanhur, and I want to know everything about it. So maybe just starting with the beginning, who you are and what you are doing.
All right. I will try to keep it brief, leave it open for questions. Like you said, I do mainly today interspecies research, which means I study particularly the plant world and plant intelligence. I started with that when I arrived at Damanhur, and I fell in love with a device called the music of the plants, which is a device that allows plants to become musicians. And from there, I started to learn more about plants and their intelligence and the way that they quote unquote think. So the plant mind, you can say. And that took me down a rabbit hole to understand dynamics in the world in general, like how we live our lives connected to nature. So what we call biophilia, which is the innate feeling that we are connected to nature because we are a part of nature. So my primary work in my field is all around nature-inspired systems, which is where the biomimicry comes in. So biomimicry is kind of using different types of biology, organisms, to mimic. So mimicking, copying what it is that they do to create new processes and projects and products and services. So when we look to nature, nature has 3.8 billion years of research, and they've solved many of the problems that today we're expressing and that we have. And so if we look to nature, we can find solutions. So my work in general is around how do I look to nature to find solutions to problems. And those could be personal problems. Those could be systematic problems, like what's happening in water management and climate change and all kinds of different areas. It can also mean in your own business, how do you organize a team, or how do you overcome your own issues? So I use nature-inspired systems for that. But my background is kind of vast, and that's what brings me there. You know, I started off in high tech. I'm a music engineer and electrical engineer, so I've always been around the arts, and creativity is a very big part of my life. And I spent many years working in high tech, using that sort of creative mindset to create some of the world's most interesting products, including Windows, including real video and real audio. And then I moved into event production, taking again that creative look at how do we explore the world through events and circus arts and different forms of expression. So I have like a music background, an artistic background, an engineering background, a technology background, and then I rediscovered my spiritual background probably about 15 years ago, and really fell in love with Kabbalah. So I started as a Kabbalah teacher, and it was bringing all of these things together. You know, Kabbalah gave me the ability to find a map to really bridge who I am and what I do, and to give it a new vocabulary, a way where our true entrepreneurial, creative, natural self can be expressed at both at physical, at spiritual, and emotional, at all these different levels, and how to then use all of this to create a life where you're fulfilled doing the things that you really love, and you're supported doing the things you love. And in all of this journey, which includes high-tech companies and Cirque du Soleil and living in many different locations, I at some point ended up in Damanhur. And I was invited to Damanhur to work on a project to develop their social media strategy, to start to finally take Damanhur out further into the world. Damanhur had been public already in the sense of open to the public, but we, because of things in our past, had had a hard time really expressing to the world why we're here. And it's an important message. It's a message of hope. I mean, we're a community, for those that don't know it, we're a community in northern Italy. We're one of the largest in the world, the largest in Italy. And we have about 500 to 600 people that live there. But what is interesting, I mean, one of the many things that's interesting is that Damanhur is a society based on a shared mission, on an experiment, and how do we experiment new forms of living together where spirituality and physical life are one and the same, where we can express ourselves and how we can use our hands to meditate. We create things, and we've created in that way what's called the eighth wonder of the world.
Exactly.
Temples of humankind. So underground temples that fully built by hand, that we continue to work with and use and adorn and paint and sculpt and build in every which way. And so it's a society that allows us to really be ourselves and allows us to really express ourselves at 360 degrees. And for me, it's given me the opportunity to express all these different parts of myself in one way, and to kind of help me focus on bringing that to people. So helping, new entrepreneurs and naturepreneurs set their business up and create things, and in new societies, or like, for example, grant-based projects like in the EU, helping to develop these nature-inspired systems to solve the problems that are to solve the big problems that are being created by the industries that we have today in architecture, in water management, in relations between people. So I guess you can say I'm a sort of a polymath. I do a lot of different things.
I love that. Like, already I have so many questions in my mind about this. I was just thinking about an example, like a very specific example of how you observed something that the nature already provides and how you implemented that in a business. So whichever field, be it architecture or design or whatever kind of project you want to mention.
Yeah, I mean, we use biomimicry in many, many different ways. For example, right now we're working on a project for the EU. It's a Horizon 2020 project called Idrusa. And in one of our first biomimicry workshops to create a design, we looked at, for example, the legs of a wallaby and how their muscles contract and spring for the idea of creating something where you can put a weight on it and then it catapults it up into a container. We looked at the way the aortic valve, so the valve inside your heart, works in order to create, because it creates a seal. It has 3 chambers and it seals. And then when it has a flow, it pushes. And so we were looking at that for designing the way that mass, in this case a biomass, passes through a tube, but it's sealed so that there's no leakage of air or smell. We looked at, for example, a naked mole rat, which is a small type of mole that has not a naked mole rat, excuse me, a star-nosed mole, wrong animal. And it has like these sensors in its kind of nose, you could say. And it's one of the fastest animals to be able to detect that something is edible and then eat it. Because it has all these different kinds of mechanical receptors on the end. So these are just some ways that we were looking at to design this particular product. But there's many products now already out there. I mean, even Velcro itself is biomimetic. If you know Velcro from the 2 pieces, it mimics the way that the seeds of a burdock work. And so it has this little end piece with a little hook on the very end, and that's what hooks together to the other side. And that's what hooks onto your clothes when you walk and you have seeds that kind of hook onto yourselves. So we use biomimetic things all the time, but when we build, often we forget to look to nature because we think we're more clever. We think we're smarter than nature. But in reality, nature's been here a lot longer and it's a lot smarter than we are.
Yeah, I love that. I honor that, the fact that you are taking the time and being humble about the way of learning and actually going back to the root and to this, this extremely wise system of knowledge that is already ingrained in nature and also ingrained in our bodies. That's
Absolutely.
why we talk a lot about like listening to the body, and the body has a wisdom that maybe the mind can't yet perceive. I would love to go more into this, but like my heart calls to Damanhur.
Yes.
So when you are saying we, for example, the project that you are carrying out for the EU, do you have a team or are you working through Damanhur for these projects?
So that particular project is connected to an organization that I'm a part of. I'm the communications manager for a nonprofit called Bioversum, Nature Inspired Systems. So I work on EU grants mostly through them and through educational products related, educational projects connected to biomimicry. In Damanhur, I have, as I said, I worked in the PR department there for many years, doing all their social media strategy. And then I was the person responsible for the music of the plants when after many years, to launch it to the world. So I've done different roles there. And as a citizen, we do many, many different things. Each citizen carries out, in addition to what you might consider traditional work, we all have many different roles that we carry out, because that's part of this new type of society of connecting across different areas of interest and carrying out projects that can enhance not just your life, but life of Damanhur, but as well as life of the world. I mean, we're really there for humanity.
Exactly. So going back to how Falco, who we think of as the founder of Damanhur, what was the initial story, and then how this community started, and when did it choose to open? Because for a long period of time, it was something that maybe in certain spirituality circles you would hear about it, but it was not really something that was publicly embraced.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess to tell the story of Falco, besides the fact that it takes time, would also mean which story? Because the beauty and the fun of living at Damanhur, which I call Hogwarts for adults, is the fact that we operate on many different planes. So I could tell you one story that's completely physical, you know, from him dreaming of Damanhur when he was 8 years old, to being in Turin and starting to give presentations and having a group of people who were studying his spiritual physics information and doing research of their own, and coming to the conclusion that if you want to really bring your spirituality into daily life, or if you want to bring anything, you need a group of people, you need a community, because all of us have taken workshops. All of us have gone out into the world and like taken really great trainings. And if you don't have a group of people to share that with, to practice it, to do it, after a while, you stop. And so this group of people around Falco said, you know what, we need to live together. We want to bring our spirituality into daily life in a way that in Northern Italy at that time, you really couldn't do. It was the 1970s. And things were much more closed than they are today. And so on a physical plane, there's an entire story that sort of sits in that realm. But then there's an entire myth that you can either choose to believe or not. I often quote a man by the name of David Bramwell, who gave a TEDx talk in the UK many years ago. And he said of Damanhur, which he had gone to visit in a travel that he did of many different communities, he said, what I love about Damanhur is that it is a community that is actively creating and living its own mythology. We believe in the galactic mission. We believe that we're all here to help humanity, and that not by having them all become Damanhurians, but by inspiring people and being a model of what you can do if you work together. What you can do if you take whatever is important for you, what is consciousness or spirituality or, doing good, whatever words you want to use. But if you use this in your circle and you were to really live it by living together, by embracing it completely, what could you create? And we have been able to see that you can create things like the pyramids become understandable, the pyramids of Egypt, because now we start to get that it was that union that helped to create, to share that knowledge.
You mentioned Damanhurian, and also citizen, right? So how does one get to being a part of this community? Or, for example, if somebody's curious, like I am super curious, what would be the first step to interact with the community?
So the first step would be coming to visit. I mean, of course, the first step is coming online. You can find out tons of us. We have the blog and we have social media, and we're very active, and we're very open. But really, it's about visiting, because you need to see it. It's very difficult to think about it because we have this vision that community is one big piece of land, and we don't live that way. We actually have many pieces of lands, and we have many different types of houses, which we call nucleos, because each house is slightly different. Each family has its own alchemy, and we want, even within the community itself, you can express. So the first step is visiting. Then if you really are interested in learning more, we have a 3-month program called New Life, where you can come and be a temporary citizen of the community, and you get to experience what it's like to live as one of us. And then after that, if you can go back home and bring that knowledge back with you, you can choose to live maybe nearby. Maybe you're very interested in the spirituality, but not so much in the social, and you want to adapt differently. And we have citizens that don't live inside of our houses, or you can choose to go for, the full citizenship, and there's an entire path to bring you into the community. So our goal is not, like I said, to bring everybody to live there. Our goal is to create models and to have people who want to live as a Damanhurian come, and if not, to help encourage, community building in other places. So we stay very connected to people who are interested. We have lots of visitors and friends who come every year, and lots of different programs that we try to do, and ambassadors like myself who go out into the world to help, to teach courses, to share knowledge, to participate, and maybe, help the creation of new communities in ways. But yeah, we try to be as open as possible.
I find that very interesting, and what you mentioned, that you are an ambassador. So basically, you are partly living there, but then going and giving talks, or just working on your projects and actually helping people implement the principles. I don't know if principles is or just the way of viewing things that you have at Damanhur, right?
Yes, exactly. So we have all types of different ways to connect, and so for the ambassadors, there's also multiple types. There's ambassadors that have a specific region and an area that they go to often. We also have centers in the world, in Japan, in Croatia. We have groups in the United States. We have groups in many, many different countries. Germany, we even have a nucleo, one of our houses, that's in the process of being born in Norway and in Germany. So, and then we have other types of communities, like in Hungary, for example, that are connecting to us through our community school. So they're learning the principles, like you said, of what it's like to live in community, but then they're adapting it to their own community and their own goals. So we have many different ways that ambassadors can work. Some of them are doing specifically trainings and teachings and presentations, or some of them are more like me, who work on the principles, for example, being highly connected to nature, and then bring that into their work and then share Damanhur through those channels.
What you mentioned, like this idea of community is very present in throughout our discussion, the idea of community was very pregnant. And I'm just wondering if so you seem to be living the kind of life that many people aspire to be living. You started with Kabbalah, and you said that at one point everything that was maybe dissipated because you had different interests came together, and now you feel that you are living your purpose. I know that it's very like marketing, like this is what everybody aims for, you know what I mean? To like really be integrated and like be leading with their higher self, and no longer live life just like, you know, a normal life that is not actually paying off on a spiritual level. So for you, it started with Kabbalah. For anybody who's watching this and they kind of feel the calling, and they kind of are in this moment where they feel that they have different things that they put in place in their life, but they can't find the glue of bringing everything together, what would you recommend?
Oh, what would I recommend? I think The Seeker is really good and great to take classes, to go looking for things. But I think more importantly, I mean, Falco used to always tell us, it's great to try new things, but you have to really give something a good try. Like you have to stick to something for a little bit. For me, it was about, you really have to, like you said, you have to connect to that higher self and say, who do I want to be? You know, who do I really want to be? Not who I am today, which we will find a path from one to the other, but asking yourself who you want to be, and then looking for those interests. Like, for example, for me, part of my spiritual awakening came when I realized that I didn't have that many friends. I had never been very good at the time at really creating friendships. And which was funny because I didn't really move back then. I grew up pretty much in the same place, in the same house even. And it wasn't until I started to move a lot that I really learned how to create friendships, because I had to step outside of my own definition of friendship to give it a new one. So I sat there and I said, okay, who do I want to be? And then I looked for activities or programs that put me in that direction. So I think it's important for anybody who's looking to really awaken, to think about who they want to be, and then find somebody who's doing that, even if it's just a piece, and go ask them, how did you do it? Where did you go? What did you do? And start to create those connections with people. Because I think when you create those connections, then it'll start to open, and maybe that path won't be your path, but you'll try it for a little bit, and then you'll move on and try it for a little bit more, and then maybe adjust and try something else. But you need to find that one first person, which for me was, I was acting at the time. I was working in high tech, and my way of expressing myself was through acting. And I was given a role, like I auditioned and I got a role, which was completely different than any role I had ever done. And I met one person there, and he just showed me a different life. And I said, that's where I want to be. And so I went to him and I said, you know, he was younger than I was. He wasn't maybe as economically successful, but he had a life that inspired me. And I went to him and I said, what do you do? Where do you go? Who are your friends? And I started to hang out with them. And in the end, that opened a door, and that opened another door. And so I think you need to find that, who do I really want to be next? Which is not going to be maybe who you're going to be in 10 years, but it's who do I want to be next? And then look for the people or the activities that can take you there.
Great story. At this moment, who is your inspiration, or what are you inspired by? Okay, nature, I got that.
Plants. Inspired by plants. Actually, to be honest, I'm really inspired by storytellers that are telling their stories in other mediums. This is right now a big inspiration to me, because I do communications. I do business development also with people, and I do a lot of like helping people really find their story. And just the other day, a friend of mine who is an amazing architect, an award-winning architect, and in sustainability and in creative new types of buildings, we were talking about how do you create community through architecture? And he showed me, he had just laid on a table a whole series of things, and it was a beautiful story. It was a story that inspires you. So I'm really inspired by those people who can tell their story, but who are using their story to create the world that we really want to live in.
I hear you about that. And this comes to mind, like being in service, and how I feel that most people who are on the spiritual path, that's the moment when you understand that there is something bigger that you want to achieve than just your own happiness and like your own well-being. That's the moment when you start really like using your potential and really getting inspired to like give more to other people. So yeah,
absolutely. And it's about really getting out of your own way, you know, like quieting. We say in biomimicry, they often use the expression quieting the cleverness. We tend to think we know the answers. And when you go back into more what we call primitive societies, which I'm not convinced they were primitive at all. But when you go back into these societies, one of the things that you see over and over again is they spent a lot more time in contemplation. They spent a lot more time being bored, a lot more time being okay with sitting and listening to yourself, and connecting to nature in that way. So they would sit and look at the hills or the sun or the sea or anything else and allow that awe, that wonder, that beauty of what is out there, allow that to really inspire them. And that's where the good ideas come from. That's where the inner peace comes from. And that's what I think we're missing today in our society, which doesn't mean I have to go out into the middle of nothing. I mean, I often, when I give my talks, talk about what would it take you to recognize the beauty of nature inside of your city. Like, for example, right now I'm in Vienna, in an area that I don't know very well, because the nonprofit that I work with is based in Austria. And just yesterday, I walked out or a few days ago, I walked out and I took a walk to just nowhere. I was just walking, and there's this park. And now I've passed this park 3 or 4 times. It's a small park, and it's, you know, grass and a little bit of trees and all these hammocks and these platforms. And today I passed by, and it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the park was full of all these people who were sitting. So these small platforms that are maybe, you know, a few centimeters off the ground, and there was maybe 5 or 6 people sitting on each one, families. Some people were sitting on the grass, some people were getting sun, some people were lying on a hammock. And I was thinking, wow, when was the last time I allowed myself to just lie there and just watch the city go by and enjoy that wonder? And how much more like recharged, how much more connected to my city I would feel, how much more inspired I would feel if I just gave myself that time to do it.
Absolutely, I hear you. And you mentioned something very interesting about boredom. I think that boredom is the thing that we run from most, like not suffering, no, boredom. And as you said, like once you kind of transcend that, once you can stay with your boredom, that's when you pass to another level. And it's not like a higher level or whatever. It's just something different when you start experiencing, just what is. There is boredom, and it's okay.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We are taught then a day of boredom is a day wasted. And yes, if you spend every single day and you don't accomplish anything, like Falco used to say, you know, an idea in your head is useless because you need to bring it out.
Yeah.
So nobody's saying that you should just sit there and do nothing, but absolutely that do something, learn something, then rest. and let it sink in and connect to it for real. Because when you connect to it, then you can use it. Then you can use it at a whole different level, because there's, of course, intellectual connecting, but there's a lot more levels of connecting. And so we need to give ourselves that space to strategize, to plan, and also to reflect on that plan. So when I, for example, work with people, that's part of what we do. We create a strategic plan that involves that reflection, that involves going out into, for example, nature. And to use an example to show you, your nature notebook, where you sit there, I don't know if you can see it, and draw out what you're seeing and write things, but also draw, maybe record, use your other senses. And so we work on how do you use that time of reflection, which could be in nature, it could be just sitting in your apartment, it could be staring at, the beautiful plant that's in your room, because each one of these is going to give you something new.
Absolutely, I hear you. And I think it's also like this need to create. We have this need to create, and probably there is this distinction that is not very clear in our head, because we are running to create, to do stuff, but the creation also happens in silence, when you let things sediment, when you let things come like naturally to surface, and not constantly, what should I do next?
Yeah, and also allowing, quote unquote, the word meditation, as you think about it, take different forms. I mean, I think in some ways, while I appreciate all of the Eastern types of meditation that have been so promoted, it doesn't work for everybody. For example, I fell in love with Kabbalah because it was a completely different way to meditate. Because me sitting around saying Om does not work. It does nothing for me. And I love Dom and her when we say we meditate with our hands. I love when we get together and we work on something, whether it's carrying wood, from one place to stack it somewhere else, or cutting the grass, or digging into the temples, or painting. These types of things that in some ways shut your mind off in a different way. And they allow you to bond with people. So they allow you to create a mind that is of the group that is working on that. And what comes out of that is precious. And we don't know how to do this anymore. Like I remember how many times, I don't know, everybody who's moved and they call their friends and they're like, can you come over and help me move? I'll give you pizza or whatever. Just come over and help me. And think about all the great conversations you have with those friends in those moments, because you're doing something that has a purpose, because you need to move, and yet at the same time is not too hard. And you allow yourself to really connect with those people and allow these people into something that's sort of intimate for you, and that vulnerability of saying, you're helping me, and we're helping each other, because you're getting pizza out of it, I'm getting moving. And we're getting this bond. And it sounds so silly, but these rituals have been lost. And we especially lose them in business. We think we're supposed to be sort of corporate-y. And even when we create our own small businesses or entrepreneurial type things, especially even in social innovations, we forget that those rituals are super important. So recreating a ritual, recreating your culture, and giving it value of just doing things together and allowing that to be reflection.
It's also, I was just thinking that it's also a form of generosity, because, okay, maybe the person gets a pizza, but what they get more than a pizza, it's the feeling of being valuable and making something for somebody else. And that's really priceless.
Exactly.
So it's a form of generosity where you are able to offer time and create this connection, and also receive what the other person is giving in terms of connection to not only the fact that they are moving your boxes.
Exactly. And that's, I think, one of the big lessons for me living in Damanhur in these years of that. That's what nature does. I mean, nature is all about these types of relationships, and some of them are competitive. Some of them are mutualistic, which means everybody gets a benefit. Like there's all kinds of different relationships, and that's what's required. We need those because a certain amount of competition can be good to spark your like desire to create. And then, but then mutualisms are good for maybe longevity. And sometimes one group takes a little bit and another group gives a little bit, and then it reverses. And if you trust, which is the big thing that you're building in all of this work together, you're building trust, then you know that it's all going to balance out the way it should because you trust in the overall process. And that's really what we're trying to create, because that's where life is fun. Like if I trust you and you say, come, let's do this. Okay. Who knows what the new adventure is going to be? If instead I say, well, where are we going?
Yeah.
And this is why Damenher has a group called The Game of Life. And the Game of Life, El Gioco della Vita, has one mission: change. They're there to make sure we don't fall into habits and that we use change to really trust and play with each other. And so therefore they can take you away on a journey. They can ask you to do something in public. They can come to your house and do a dynamic. They can move things around. And of course, you always have to, you can always say no if you don't want to. But the point being is that this group helps us remember that play and change and trust is what makes life exciting and fun, because I discover new things when I blindly trust that this is going to take me somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. I'm like manifesting the fact that I'm gonna get to Damanhur at the beginning of 2019.
Yes.
Okay, Tigrilla, at this moment in your life, what do you find most rewarding?
Connection to others. Like there's, to me, nothing more rewarding than conversations that lead to actions because we connected. So I just this afternoon had a fantastic like coffee time with somebody here in Vienna, with these two social entrepreneurs that are building a project around how do we inspire people to act on their own, because not everybody today has a big social circle and we have big problems in the world. So we can't really wait until everybody gets connected. We need people to act on their own. And so they're looking for social innovations to help people connect. So I was consulting with them. And I love these conversations because we pull from, Stone Age moments and psychology and nature. And it's inspiring to see how the transdisciplinary, these multiple disciplines are starting to really work together. And then we were talking, I'm working on another project where we're looking to build a kind of co-living situation with health and healing built into it, of like, how do you build the architecture for health and healing? How do you build systems? But how do you create the connections, and in addition to just the healing modalities that are offered? So how do we really, so I'm really inspired right now by all these nature-inspired processes that are finally starting to make it into the mainstream, that is giving a new value to life. Like life is no longer valued by how many euros I have or how many dollars I have in my bank account. Life is really valued by the connections I have to people and what I do with those connections. So it's not just as easy as saying I have 5,000 friends on Facebook, or a Facebook page with 30,000 people on it, but are you really connecting to those 30,000 people? Are you either inspiring, and more importantly, are you being inspired? Because even if it can't be a one-way street. I need to get just as much as I give.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that. I am in awe. I am so grateful that we had this conversation tonight. Okay, so people can find you on different social media portals, already on your website.
Absolutely.
And afterwards, like after the live, this video will be available on YouTube. So all these links will be available there, on Facebook too, and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. Is there anything else that you would like to add or share?
I think that I want people to know that whether you're alone or with a group, you can still make a difference. Like you can still live the life you really want. And, you know, it just takes one step. Don't worry about the big things. Like don't try to change everything at once, which is the big mistake we do. Just think about your next step. And this is one of the big things that I work with people when I do my consulting type work is let's concentrate on the strategy of, yeah, you want to know the long-term goal, but let's worry about where you want to go next and give yourself that time to reflect, that time to be inspired, that time to really connect to people and to places and to finding nature even in your own home and in the city. Because, you know, when you make those connections, you'll find that life becomes more exciting and you start to live the life you've been dreaming about instead of the life you think somebody else wants you to live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love this message. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tigrilla.
Thank you.
Tonight. And I'm going to meet you personally in Damanhur. Hopefully you're going to be there.
Yes. And if anybody wants to come to Damanhur, please contact me through my social media. And let's talk, and I can help you navigate through the website or, you know, through the visits if you need any help.
That's great. That's very generous. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You here tonight, and yeah, I'm gonna share with you the video as soon as it's ready.
Perfect.
Thank you. Have a happy evening. Bye.
You too. Bye.